We can start now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonelle James, and I'm an entrepreneur from St. Lucia with a background in health and wellness, tourism, and the creative industries. I'm very honored to be your MC for this webinar, organized by the United Peace Federation. So, a special welcome to our panelists today. These young adults come from various backgrounds, and today we will hear what fostering a nation of peace means to each of them. I know we're in a virtual setting, but let's give them a round of applause. And as we prepare to begin, I also take this opportunity to welcome our viewers. Thank you for showing your interest in today's forum. And you know, the Universal Peace Federation is a global network consisting of individuals and organizations that are dedicated to building a world of peace centered on universal, spiritual, and moral values. It promotes interfaith cooperation, mutual understanding, and this is based on the principles of interdependence, mutual prosperity, and universally shared values. All right, so I think it was very important to share that with you so that we understand exactly what direction that we're heading in. Now, to start off today, we're going to give the floor to Mr. Remy Topier. And if you are hearing about Remy for the first time, he's the director of the Universal Peace Federation in St. Lucia, originally from France, but St. Lucia has been his home for the last 27 years. His main effort, well, one of them that is to strengthen families as an essential way to break the cycle of poverty and to reduce violence and criminal behavior. His background is extensive in this regard. He has conducted numerous workshops from whether it be for conflict resolution, character education in schools and in youth groups. Welcome, Remy.
Thank you, Jonelle, for your introduction, and welcome everyone. Welcome panelists. Thank you to be here this morning together. That's wonderful to see all of you. And also welcome to all those who join online to watch this webinar. I really appreciate your efforts, panelists, to be here. I know that to prepare, you had to think about it, and sometimes not really what we think about it. You had to be a little bit more idealistic, maybe, than usual. So I know you really are doing your best to make St. Lucia a good and a harmonious and a peaceful nation. And each of you in your own field, with your own talents, and you spend your time and by love for the people of St. Lucia and the nation of St. Lucia. And this is priceless. So that's really because of your presence, you make this webinar also very valuable. Thank you so much. So, you know, you are working hard. You are not waiting for things to happen by themselves, just happen like that. In fact, you know, many of us, we have been thinking that, you know, at the appointed time, God will bring down the kingdom of peace on earth. Maybe you heard that. So, in fact, you know, many people told me, but Mr. Topier, why do you work so hard for peace? Anyway, peace will never come. It will never exist on the earth. Look, even the Bible saying, speaking of wars and rumors of wars. And they don't say it, but they are thinking, you know, you are wasting your time. So I think many of us, we are thinking like that because we don't really know or understand clearly what is God's heart and God's desire and God's situation. So we all have free will, given by God. We all have free will, and we are responsible to use this free will for the good of others. And God even respects our free will. in fact, we realize God cannot force us to love one another. God cannot force us to love others, to care for others. It has to come from ourselves. Can he? Can he force us? No, he cannot. Well, some maybe say, but God is all-powerful and omnipotent. Yes, he is. But there is one thing that God cannot do. This is to trample on our free will. That's important. Maybe you are thinking, what are you talking about? Huh? Why God cannot trample on our free will? So there are two reasons I would like to give. One reason is that if God would trample on our free will, then we would do his will. But that would not be because we sincerely love God. It would be because we are afraid. It will not be genuine love. It will not be voluntarily from our own. So that means that if God would trample our free will, it would diminish the quality of the relationship between God and human beings. And those, it means it would diminish the quality of love between God and us, and also would diminish the joy of this relationship. So that's why God cannot trample on our free will. And then there is another reason too, is that we become loving people by giving and receiving love. You know, as we grow, we become more mature, loving others, caring more for others, thinking of others more than me. It's not anymore just me, but we think of others. And this needs time. We need to experience this. You know, we can read love from books. We can read something in books, but we cannot really learn love without experiencing it. We have to learn to give and receiving, and we have to experience. So that's why God cannot make us mature or perfect. We have to work on it. So that's why it takes so long, in fact, for human beings to grow, you know, at least 20 years. You know, I come from a farm in France, and I saw the cow, when they give birth to a small baby cow, a calf, after 10 minutes, the calf can walk. And after 1 year, they can have their own calf. You know, they can reproduce and have calf. But for human being, it takes at least 20 years to grow. So why? It's because we learn this, we have to experience love. So let's be really mature and responsible persons who understand that God cannot do everything. We have to do. This is very important to realize. We have the responsibility to become mature persons, and now we understand better than God wants us to cooperate with him. So also we realize God wants peace, absolutely wants peace, but he cannot do it alone. That's why he needs all of us to cooperate with him. And that's his desire. Surely he will support any effort when we invest ourselves and understanding that we cooperate with him. Surely he will be always there. So thank you very much, panelists, for being at the front line to really invest yourselves. And now you can realize that by doing this, you also can make God's work, in a sense, easier. We absolutely need to cooperate with God. Then we can have a better St. Lucia, and we can have peace in St. Lucia. We can all do it centered on this same love for the nation and the same love for a God, a Heavenly Father, that we can cooperate with him. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all your future contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Topier. So we heard about taking personal responsibility for our growth. We have been given free will by God, and that God requires our cooperation for peace. Great. So our first panelist today is Mr. Jonathan Michel. And I will give you some background on Jonathan. He's a writer and serves as a director at People's Discount Pharmacy. One second, we have a little interference.
All right.
Okay. All right. He holds I'm going to take it from the top again. Jonathan is a writer and serves as a director at People's Discount Pharmacy. He holds a bachelor's degree in political science and is currently pursuing a master's degree in Washington State. He has a strong interest in political analysis, moral philosophy, poetry, and music production. He has written about topics such as effective altruism, moral realism, political partisanship, ideology, and mental health. He joins us today to discuss the role of empathy in fostering a nation of peace. Welcome, Jonathan. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd, of course, like to thank Mr. Topier and Ms. James for hosting this event. And hello as well to my fellow panelists. Forgive me, I'm on the west coast of the United States right now. It's 6 a.m. for me. It's still dark outside. And I'm not exactly all the way awake, but, we'll get through this. Grain of salt, I'm far from a policy expert in the St. Lucian context. I'm certain better minds than mine can weigh how to best connect the subject of peace to education funding or the number of local parks and churches and things like that. I tend to think about these things more through, the abstraction of philosophy and moral norms. I'll say I feel a certain disillusionment in hearing St. Lucians describe themselves. Near Independence Day and Journée Créole were all too happy to embody a national civic pride, I'd say largely through the symbolism and the iconography of culture. Dress, music, language, all these things are important, but they're hardly substitutes for an authentic, unifying national identity and philosophy. I notice that people don't seem very proud to be who they are or to live among who they live among. They seem in despair. They seem, despite themselves, frustrated to be of their own people. We're a wonderfully and a terribly small country. It's a drawback in some respects and an asset in others. I wouldn't imagine that among 180,000 odd people, there's enough room to manage the kind of internal and cultural upheaval besetting the island, and yet somehow, and perhaps to our credit, we've managed it anyway. I'm not conceited enough to think that I have anything like a panacea solution for all of this, but I can offer a framing device, which I think might be helpful to assessing the problem. I've been introduced as a person here to discuss the merits of empathy. That's what this is largely about. But given what I've stressed so far, it might seem that my argument would run in a straight line. I can easily sit here and say that the hooligans, the ruffians, the ragamuffins who add an extra 10 minutes to the weekly death announcements and who are mostly responsible for a low national morale are simply misunderstood. I could say that. I could say their failures are less the ignobility of a handful of bad apples and are somehow an indictment of a wider cultural disinterest in tending to the needs of a vulnerable underclass. That sounds good to me. Maybe we should all just be looking in the mirror. Everyone has heard something like this before. Of course, I do sincerely hope for an empathic and empathetic world. I assume most of us do. But I actually would implore us all not to be naive about the limitations of pure emotional empathy in realizing a peaceful nation and world. Empathy as a pro-social feature of the human species, I believe, is an indispensable tool of the human soul, of our neurochemistry. I don't intend to undermine the value of empathy in a population. Anyone who knows what's good for them would quicker find themselves in company with the large-hearted altruist than the sociopath. But in thinking about how to actionably realize a world that we're proud of, we shouldn't just be concerned with who among us is kindness, who's the kindest person. That's important. By all means, do your good deeds and hope that it's passed on. But somewhere along that chain, you know that someone less benevolent than you sits all too excited, ready to break that chain and ruin it for the rest of us. And herein lies the limitation of a strictly empathic conception of goodness. Empathy, for its clear utility, even in the most saintly among us, is in finite supply. Empathy, it's a spotlight that places itself within confined parameters. Each of us can pronounce ourselves the most cosmopolitan altruist, the most patriotic countryman, but there's seemingly inescapable hierarchy of empathic fixation that our minds are embedded within. Imagine turning on your television and the international news is on, the BBC maybe. They're talking about the weather or something banal, and underneath the anchorman, you see the news crawler ticking by, and it briefly describes the death of 300 people in an earthquake in a country far away that you know very little about. How do you feel? Do you drop to your knees as if it were your child dying? As if it were happening down the street? Does it even register with you? What's the point? Well, it's that we'd be wrong to make the absence of this empathic response something conspicuous. The sanctity of those lives lost is no less obvious to our rational faculties in the absence of emotional distress. Yet some of us make this error. They imagine that to find themselves, for whatever reason, in indifference to plight is suffice to dismiss its importance entirely. But of course, you know better. Why do you? In empathy's place here, there exists not just the vagaries of your emotions, but a kind of empathic wisdom, an intellectualizing understanding of empathy's essence. The distant statistics of plight, we acknowledge, matter whether we can feel them in the moment or not. The shortcoming of our emotional here and now, I believe, is why nearly all major religions and civilizations have codified or made explicit norms of the principles of selflessness in its elusive wisdom. Whether you're an adherent to Christian and Islamic ideals of the Golden Rule, whether you're a selfless Buddhist or a Hindu in service to ahimsa, you're looking at startlingly similar frameworks of intent. Cultures everywhere seem to have this latent understanding that the emotional whims of mankind alone cannot suffice in building a decent world. I think we should appreciate how the surrounding normative and institutional contexts and how we construct them allow for peace and goodness in practice. In the safest, most peaceful countries, people need not expect their neighbor to be egoless philosophers or unassailably Christ-like in their selflessness. They'd be let down every time. They can merely ask that they be held to account by communities, norms, and institutions fine-tuned and built by wisdom to select for the best possible outcomes. We cannot just hope to be kind. We must be wise enough to distill the moral wisdom of selflessness down to something structured, actionable, reliable, and predictable. Faith, family, public and private institutions that we trust, and structures that are thoughtfully crafted to create good incentives where instinct alone fails us. In summary, as totally as your faculties will allow you, love your neighbor deeply and strive with earnestness for the probably unattainable standard of true selflessness, but understand that to most effectively deliver the promise of peace for your fellow St. Lucian, you will often need to follow your head as often as you follow your heart. You will not arrive at peace through cloying sentimentality and platitudes, but through wisdom and reason. When thinking of a peace, not in abstraction, but actionably, each of us should ask ourselves how best we can allow for the moral, spiritual, and intellectual flourishing of our country. This is the dividing line, I believe, between successful societies and failed ones. There can be no moral reckoning without an intellectual one. Those of us with any sort of traction in culture, education, or family planning should take heed. In doing so, however, I urge that we never lose our bearings. For as critical as I've been of purely empathic reasoning, let none of us lose our sense of the centrality of compassion and, yes, empathy in each of our societal pursuits. All of us, in our varying commitments, might differ at points drastically in our reasoning about how best and at what angle to scale this summit of moral ascendance. But in devising our route up this incline, it matters profoundly that each of us is actually trying and aspiring to get to the same point, that each of us values a moral dignity of impartiality and compassion that sits at the top and at the center. Not merely power, not merely competence, not merely partisan victory, but a true realization of peace, even if it's blurry from our present vantage point. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Brief yet thought-provoking, all right? A brief yet thought-provoking presentation on how our ability to understand and share the feelings of another can help us be a more peaceful people. And that question that he asked, how best can we allow for the moral, spiritual, and intellectual flourishing of our country? Thank you. Next up, we have Keziah St. Bryce. And let me give you a little insight on Keziah. Keziah is a youth worker employed with the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports and an aspiring entrepreneur. Helping others has always been her number one passion from a tender age. She's undertaken a number of activities thus far to aid in youth development and crime prevention, and is constantly involved in taking steps towards more impactful and sustainable projects. She's currently a Global Peace Ambassador and a Global Shaper, serves as the President of the Castries Central Youth and Sports Council, Chairperson of Castries Enhancement Committee, Youth Representative on the National Advisory Board, President of the Youth Advocacy Movement, and is active in several other youth-based organizations. Keziah is here with us, and she will begin at this moment. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning to all, and thank you for having me. Today, I would like to look at peace from different angles. Most times when we think of peace, but I like to look at it in the aspects of intrinsic peace or peace from within, because most times we start peace because of us things happen just because we're not at peace, right? And we're angry, we're jealous. So with intrinsic peace, I did a survey sometime 2 months or 3 months ago, and one of the questions that was asked, and that survey was done in a community which was seen to be at risk or labeled high risk as a result of high violence. And the question was asked, what is something or what contributes to violence in your community? And a lot of the persons who did that, they said that jealousy and anger was a big contributor to violence. Because when you're not at peace with what you have, then you will do whatever it takes to get it. So whether it's murder or injury, then you'll get it done just because you have something that you do not have, just to acquire that. Just like a computer, right? Just going to produce or whatever is going to come out. So if you harness in anger, hate, and bitterness, at any instance, the simplest thing that happens, then you will show what you have internally, which is the anger and bitterness, and that can cause crime and violence in our society. So let me give you an example. If, let's say, there's a coworker that you hate with a passion, right? And sometimes you're in the office and all you can think about is that person because you really don't like them. Sometimes the person pass near you, and sometimes they just probably touch you by accident, or maybe step on your toe by accident, just because you have that hate and anger inside of you. Instead of saying, well, it's okay, and making it peaceful, then it will become to an argument, a quarrel, and sometimes even end up in a fight, just because you're not at peace with yourself internally. And moving on from that, sometimes you're angry with somebody else, but because you're so angry whilst walking on the street or walking someplace else, then somebody brush you or push you on the side, and just because you have in that anger, you will just explode and pass it. So that's not the best way, because before, we used to have fights with, quarreling and just fights with punches and kicks. But these days, if you push somebody on the street as a result of your anger, then most times it ends up with gunshots and bloodshed, just because of the era that we're in. So what happens when we're angry? When we're angry, usually our brain sends blood to our muscles and gets it pumped up. So now our blood is redirected to a different part of our body and we're ready to fight, we're ready to hustle, just because that's what our brain sends because of that anger. And that in itself can also cause high blood pressure and even disease, just because of all the miscongry internally, then we actually can get high blood pressure as a result of that, just because we're pumped up and our pressure rises, right? So because we have increased heart rates, we have our respiratory system has increased. Now we're breathing hard and we're ready to fight and we're ready to have war, just because from inside of us, we're not at peace. So peace basically starts with each and every one of us. All right, so recommendations. In order for us to get a more peaceful society, we need to start by making sure that we're at peace with ourselves, right? So even if it's self-care, take time to go to the beach, listen to some music if you like manicures or pedicures, or maybe even going to the gym. That's a way to actually get peace with yourself, all of those as well. And another thing is most times I find that the young person, so if something bad happens, instead of dealing with it, they usually hide it or brush it aside. And you find that sometimes when they end up in a seemingly simple situation, then they react in the most aggressive way and it leads to violence because they did not deal with whatever the issue was from the starting. So dealing with our issues is another way that we can find peace within, and that can help with our crime situation in St. Lucia. All right, so just a note to everyone on the platform to try to find ways to have peace within. And if everybody is peaceful with themselves, then they will have no need for crime, no need for war, and no need. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Keziah. It was a pleasure hearing from you. We discussed the role of hatred, jealousy, and anger in violent situations and how that transfers from one environment to a next, one person to a next. And what was quite interesting was the internal response of anger. You know, we always tend to focus on outwardly, you know, what happens when someone is angry, but to take a moment to realize that when you get angry, what is happening to your body and how that affects your health. And going right back to Remy's presentation, personal responsibility. And she stressed on taking personal responsibility to be at peace with yourself and establishing healthy habits to be able to do so. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. Our next speaker is George Senqua, and those who are very familiar with the St. Lucia soca industry, they would remember George as Platinum George in several soca competitions where he emerged successful on a number of occasions. George has since left that industry and is now a gospel minister, bringing out the word of God through his gospel music. He's part of the Youth Power Group of St. Lucia, registered with the Ministry of Youth and Sports, and he assists the youth in not only looking at their physical growth, but their spiritual growth, helping them to seek God's guidance before they act or speak or get angry. So going right off from where Keziah left off. And so I pass you on to Mr. George Senqua. Welcome, George.
Yeah. Everyone can hear me clearly.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay. Hi, good morning to everyone who's connected. I want to say thanks for being part of this meeting. As many know me, well, basically knew me in the soca industry as Platinum George. What people did not know about me that I suffered with depression. I suffered with suicidal thoughts as well. Many people believe that just because that you see people smiling, they're probably out there partying, drinking, you know, that they are happy. and it's basically just a show. Just like when you watch a movie, you have actors that you love to see act, but remember, it is just a movie. It's just pretending to be the bad guy or pretending to be the innocent one. But when you hit it in reality, we have people who suffer the same moments as well. Making people believe that everything is well with them, making people believe that they live a life of prosperity when they live a life of shame and misery. And this is one of the reasons why today we have the youth who, who suffer inside. And when I do counseling with the youth as well. And you see what we have to understand as probably parents, brothers, sisters. Sometimes we put so much pressure on the youth when they make a mistake, but we forget that we were young as well. Sometimes we want to preach to the youth to do what is right, but we ourselves do what is wrong. So we have to live by example. I cannot want to tell the youth about living a life with light, and I live in the darkness. So now what I have done with my music, I have turned my music into passing on a word of faith to them. Because sometimes, music is very, very powerful. Depends on what type of music that you listen to. You have music that if you are sad, it makes you more depressed. You have music if you are happy, it makes you more happy. You have music if you are confused, it makes you more confused, and depends on the lyric in that song. So now what I do with the youth, I allow them to channel that music into positive, and people sometimes ask, how do Christians have fun? We do not go out and drink and party instead. But what we do is place our God first. And when we do place God first, anything and everything is possible. Right now, I write music in terms of soca gospel, reggae gospel, to get the youth to understand that it doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter how people look at you, how people judge you. What truly matters is how God sees you. Because I tell them that God did not come for those who are mighty and rich and famous. He come for those who are the least. So sometimes, we have youth who suffer from their home because sometimes the parents themselves will say something to the child, or if the child is disobedient, they will say, I leave you there for you to die because you're not listening to me. Something bad will happen to you. And parents have to understand that there is power in the tongue. Sometimes, we are through our frustration and our anger, whatever that we speak does come to light if we speak it in the life of our children. Even if that that your child is probably always a child that is smoking, or that child only wants to follow bad company, you still should not curse them through your tongue. You're still supposed to speak them in a way that is positive and tell them that you will change. One day you will change. When you start speaking to your children in that way, you help them, because children now are faced with a low self-esteem. If you tell them, and I suffered with it as well, I was the kind of person when people told me that I am not going to make it in life, I repeated it to myself. I said, yes, I'm not going to make it. When somebody said, you see what you're trying to do there, that will not succeed, I actually said it to myself. And what I was doing was holding my future behind because of what people said about me. And we get that with the youth today. When you see somebody speak to them probably, they live a life where they cannot afford, the parents cannot afford to get them that expensive shoe or that expensive bag. And when they go to the school, children make fun of them. All right. And then instead of, sometimes they know what they go through, they know that they go through the hard times. When they get home with all of that inside of them, when they reach home, the mother or the father do not ask them our school. Sometimes the parents want to pass on their problems, their frustration on their children. And that does not help the children to grow. Sometimes we listen to society speak about the youth. When you hear children, especially walking around town after school, always in a fight, we love to point the finger. But what are we doing to help? Okay, if somebody is, I would say, like a murderer, this person is behind bars, and this person now has come to understanding that he made a mistake, that he wants to change, and he's sincere in what he's saying. Sometimes instead of we motivate that person, we sometimes put that person down and say that person will never change. And this is one of the reasons why we have our youth so scattered. Sometimes when we speak to the youth and the way that, I do it, I bring them close to me. All right. I bring them to play sports, whatever sport that they love to do, could be football, basketball. We engage them in this sport, but then we pass on the word of faith that you do not put your trust in people because people are flesh. People will always disappoint you. Okay, no matter where that person comes from, doesn't matter what that person do, we have to understand that we are flesh. We will make mistakes, but it's not how we fall, is how we stand. Okay, how you stand in the situation. So having the youth now opening up to speak to me is one of the ways that I work with them. Probably some of the children come with nothing to eat. The parents have nothing to give them to eat and they are hungry. And all of this builds an anger in them as well. So then we give them something to eat, get them comfortable in terms of making them want to open up to what they are going through, not digging into their life, but making them feel comfortable in a way that they have somebody to speak to. Because right now, sometimes you want to confide in people, and then that person that you confide in is that same person that will go around and spread in your book. And this is why today we get a lot of the youth keeping things inside. Sometimes that young lady has been molested by a family member, and she wants to speak to somebody about it. She cannot go to a aunt or her own parents, and she wants to speak to somebody that will keep it confidential, that she could open up to, and she cannot find it, or he cannot find it. I remember counseling a young man that said that he wanted to kill his father. He wanted to kill his father. Why? Not because his father was abusive to his father, because his father was verbally abusing his mother. And he did not like the way that his father spoke to his mother. And he said that, his mom is that person that's a hard worker. When she comes from work, she's in the house to prepare food, clean the house. And when his father comes from work, his father is probably drunk, and would not say thank you. And he could see the tears in his mother's eye. And that built an anger inside of him towards his father. Then how we approach a child like this? And imagine that we approach a child like this, letting them know that we understand. We tell them about where we have gone through. Because sometimes the way that we can help the youth is letting them know that we ourselves, before we are where we are today, we lived a life just like them. We made mistakes just like them. We used to drink, we used to smoke just like them. But today we are free from this addiction. We are free from this problem. Why? It's not only about just saying I want to change, but then I allow God to change me. Place Him first above everything that I do. Okay, even you want to get married, you have to understand and say to them that you place God. If He is first, if you love Him first, then you will learn how to love your spouse. You will learn how to love your enemy. You will learn how to love that person that is fighting against you. And this is a way of channeling, or I will not say channel, but prevent the anger from taking over your mind. Because we see the youth today, all youth have a story. All the youth today have something that they are good in. But how do we assist them? Okay, sometimes, I listen to some of those in charge in terms of helping the youth, go to a better place. Where are we taken? Because it's just like the youth have nothing to do, nowhere to go to, no one to listen to them. No one to take them, hey, I'm going to remove you from this situation and take you to this place. Okay, I'm going to sit and actually give you, even though it's 15 minutes of just you to open up. And that is why you see, even in the schools today, there's always a fight. There's always a bullying. There's always a jealousy. We blame the youth. I don't say that we blame the youth. We have to blame ourselves as the adults. We have to blame the parents themselves, have to take responsibility in terms of making sure where that child will become. And what parents have failed in today is trying to give the child a life that they did not have. Okay? And when sometimes parents, they are very, I said to a parent the last time that she is a good mother, but a bad parent. Okay? A good mother will make sure that you raise your child the right way. Because, okay, every mother will love their child, but you would not go and give your child what you cannot. You cannot promise to your child what you cannot. You have to make the child understand that life is not the way that you expect it to be. Life, there will come hard times. There will be good days. But when the bad days come, it is not for you to get angry. It is not for you to go and steal. You have to understand that you have to work for what you want. Do not be envious of what you see people have. You understand? And this is one of the reasons why we get a lot of people who want to steal. Because the parents say, when I was young, I did not have this shoe. I was only eating dry bread and water. And now I have my child. Everything my child asks me, I have to give to my child. No matter if I don't have the money, I have to find the money. My child has to have the most expensive shoe, the most expensive phone. And then you get the child these things are not even last. The children do not even appreciate it. Because you buy a child a phone for $2,000, within a few months, that phone is destroyed. Okay, then what you would do, again, the parents will go and get another phone. They want to buy their children the most expensive shoe so that people will not point finger on their child to say that their child is the least. But then the children do not appreciate it. Instead of today, we do not find parents go out with their children like used to go and take a walk, a stroll in the park. Right now, every parent now give their child a laptop or a tablet to buy time to play games, and to basically the children now are getting lazy. And who is to blame? Do we blame the children? No, we don't blame the children. We blame ourselves for not being the parent that we are supposed to be. I remember when I grew up, I used to get, trust me, when I did something wrong, my grandmother, my mother, I used to get it. They used to take the belt. I really used to get it. But today, check out the man that I am. I did not die. I did not die. All right. So guys, this is my presentation. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. So it's important for us that we always remember that things may not always be as they look. What may seem like a life of prosperity outwardly may actually be shame and misery internally. And so being a support system is invaluable, especially to the young people in our society. And George stressed on young people over and over and over again, because why? Our youth are the future. All right. Use how we as adults overcame challenges as a way of encouraging them. And of course, live by example and put God first. So we move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Samaki Daniel. Samaki is a SALCC student and an aspiring nurse. So I'll give you some background on Samaki so that we know exactly where we're hearing from. He's currently enrolled in the Bachelor of Science he's currently enrolled in a Bachelor of Science in the nursing program at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College and is an apprentice at the Laboratory Services and Consultations Limited. His goal is to become an orthopedic surgeon in the future. Samaki is a mentor in the Our Boys Matters program sponsored by the SSDF and Massey Stores. This program helps boys with deviant behavior to remain in school. He is also a youth leader at the Cicero Pentecostal Church. And a fun fact about him is that he loves helping people, and his dream is to see a society where everyone is healthy and lives harmoniously. Welcome, Samaki. The floor is yours.
Yes, good morning, everyone. I just want to say it's a pleasure to be here to share my views on peace in our society. So I'm going to be focusing on how peace can be achieved on the individual level as well as a societal level. So on the individual level, the first thing I want to say is that we should always put God first. By having God first and adapting to the biblical teachings where we be our brother's keeper, we do unto others as we would like them to treat us. We put ourselves in a position where we don't want to hurt anyone because we know that it can always come back to us and it's not going to be beneficial when people are deliberately doing things that are going to cause us hurt and pain. And what happens is that people tend to retaliate. Then my next point would be about value sharing and positive support towards the youth. By developing positive values from a tender age, it becomes a part of us, it becomes a part of our identity, about who we are, how we treat people, how we go about our daily activities. And we'll have a greater tendency to avoid issues where if something occurs, we will try to de-escalate it and have peaceful communication, where regardless of how it is, that we know that our end goal is to have peace. The positive support helped tremendously because often at times where young men, they do not get a lot of support at home. So they go out into the world looking for support, looking for someone to tell them, you're doing good. I'm proud of you. And if they're getting negativity towards what they're doing, they would lean more towards the bad. Instead of encouraging them, we discourage them. So, and then the other thing would be about less individualism and more camaraderie. We know that we cannot survive now. In order for us to survive, we need to work as a unit. We all have our different roles, but then when we come together, that's when we achieve all we need to achieve as a society. So by looking down on people, it is never the right way, because when people feel belittled, they tend to not do what they're supposed to do, and then look for all sorts of ways in which to hurt other people. And that does not cause peace. All that causes is social unrest. With more social solidarity and less segregation, people will have the urge, to do more, help my brother out, because I know that I have my strong points and that person is weak in that area. Instead of looking down on them, like, oh, you cannot do this, I'll be like, hey, I know how to do this, so I'm going to show you. So that way, in future, if that ever comes about again, you're going to know exactly what to do. Like as the proverb said, you teach a guy how to fish rather than give him a fish on a daily basis. Now, with these points, I'm sorry. With these points stated, we would see that, yes, we do not live in a perfect society, but things can get better, as well as when policies are created that affects the youth, because the youth is the future of our society. Without them, we'll cease to exist. And it's the reason why I believe that when decisions are being made, we can always ask the youth, what do you all think about certain decisions? Because they are the ones that are directly being impacted. Yes. One, and also, yes. Okay. Yes, so that's it. I kept mine.
All right. Thank you very much, Samaki. And, the value of being our brother's keeper and doing unto others as we would like done to us, causing no pain. I listened to him speak, and I remember the prayer of Jabez from 1 Chronicles 4:10, where Jabez called unto the God of Israel, saying, "Oh, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my border. May your hand be with me, and may you keep me from evil, that I may not cause pain." God granted him that which he requested. Thank you very much. And we move on to our next presenter. Our next presenter is Yannicka Jabbar. She is the president of the National Youth Council, and she is a teacher by profession at the Clendon Mason Memorial Secondary School, a youth leader and advocate for various youth-led community and national organizations, and committees. I'm sure you will agree with me, those who are joining us here today, that the future is in great hands when we see all of these young people who are so passionate about making sure that the youth are on the right track. So they need our support. So if you're here and you're not part of an organization or providing support to an organization, commit today to get involved, because like Remy said at the beginning, it's our personal responsibility, and God needs us to collaborate for peace to happen. So Yannicka believes in assisting those in need, as she too came from humble beginnings and was given the opportunity to change. She's a mother of 2 beautiful children. So welcome, Yannicka. The floor is yours.
Thank you so very much for that introduction. The last part actually put a smile on my face. I would like to thank Mr. Topier and the panelists for giving me this opportunity to share my ideas and feedback in terms of fostering a nation of peace. I just want to start off my presentation with this Bible verse which says, train up a child in the way that he should go, and when he gets older or gets old, he or she will not depart. Many of us, we ask ourselves, or we normally ask ourselves, who am I? And some of us find ourselves struggling on this question. Some of us actually find ourselves wondering what qualities we should possess as a human being in order to be considered as a perfect or good human being. What does peace mean to us? And everybody is striving towards peace. Everybody is striving towards something that is, how would I say it, comfortable and pleasing to them. So my presentation this morning is basically tied up with Mr. Senkwa's presentation. And I just want to say thank you, Mr. Senkwa, for opening up my presentation. When we look at St. Lucia, we lack that level of patriotism. We lack that idea of who are we as a people? What makes us unique? What can we see, or what can we identify ourselves with to say that, hey, I am a St. Lucian? When we look at the news, I don't think we want to identify ourselves with the crime level. I don't think you want us to identify ourselves with the dysfunctional families that are present in society. We always want to look good in the eyes of society. And I'm saying this just to say that we have lost our level of spirituality in society, and we have lost our morals and what it takes to be, what I should say, Christ-like. Many times, many of our young persons, they do not know how to do the basic thing of having a relationship with God. And if we do not have a relationship with God and put him at the front of whatever plans that we have, then we will falter, we will not succeed. And we say to ourselves that I want to become this, I want to achieve maybe being the richest person on earth. And then when you look at yourself, you ask yourself this question: how am I going to do this? What steps am I going to take? And you actually have no clue what your first step is. However, if you have that relationship with God, he will direct your path. He will actually lead you from one step to another. And in another aspect of spirituality, I always like to draw this conclusion that, do we have self-control? And self-control is something that is very important, especially in the society that we are living in today. Somebody passes, somebody steps on another person's toe. Instead of just the basic thing of apologizing, the first reaction would be to start a fight. The first reaction would be to criticize. The first reaction would be to say some way out of the line words. However, if we have that spiritual connection with God, we will understand that it makes it easier. If we get ourselves grounded in his word as young people, then we will understand that it is not as difficult as it looks. And I remember while growing up during my primary school days that every year we would be looking forward to having those small Bibles being given to us, which would have Psalms, the New Testament and the Old Testament. And I always looked forward to this activity simply because there were students in my class that did not possess a Bible. And by the way, this was my first Bible through that program. And many students on a morning when receiving it, they would open that Bible and read. And I would say to myself, where have these activities gone to in this present society? Also, we would have religious knowledge, and that was a vital part of our school curriculum. And you ask yourself now, where is religious knowledge? We tend to focus a lot on the academics. However, if our children are not grounded in the Most High, then how are they to accomplish what they're supposed to accomplish? Because it is only through God's work, it is only through God's plans. And he said through the transforming of our minds, we will be like him or Christ-like. And it has a lot to do with our thoughts as individuals, what we take in and the mindset that we have. Our mindset, many times, if we look at what is happening in our society, there's a lot of negativity, and that makes it easy for our mindset to breed negativity. Because what is surrounding you is basically what you will be internalizing. And there's this psychologist called Ian Pavlov, and he has the theory called the conditioning theory. And it is basically how you train a child. This is what that child will follow. So for example, a student is at school. Every time it's 10:30, the bell rings for break. And if one day this bell does not ring for break, then you will hear students starting to complain. Why? Simply because they have been conditioned to that behavior. It goes the same way in our society. What our children see at home, what they see in the environment is exactly what they will come out and portray. And I remember clearly with what Mr. George was saying, many of us tend to give our children items that we did not have when we were their age, because we always want our children to become better. But guess what? We ought to teach our children that life is not easy. You will go through trials, you will go through tribulations, and we need to allow our children to understand that having the right mindset and the right attitude will get them a long way. Having the right attitude, meaning, again, your mindset. Thinking positive thoughts. Yes, it is true, the world around me may look gloomy, but one day, if I take that one step, I will be able to achieve what I am supposed to achieve. Even when we go through our situations, we are very quick to be in our feelings. We are very quick to talk and vent. But guess what? Sometimes the best thing to do is to ignore and be silent. Because when you are silent and you ignore, then your mind gives you that, it puts itself in that consequence behavior that if I react or if I were to react, this would have happened. Many times we go straight into, you made me upset and I'm going to react based on you making me upset. But we do not figure out what is going to happen in the long run. We also want to be accepted by society. And that is our biggest issue. We need to be able to stand and live the purpose that the Creator has placed us on earth for. Every one of us has a purpose. And again, it boils down back to spirituality. We may start as, maybe making a lot of mistakes, being out there and being the most troublesome child, being the most delinquent student. But guess what? Sometimes we are sent in that direction to learn lessons and to become better and to be a blessing to somebody else. I always believe that when a young person or anybody goes through something, it is your testimony for you to share it with somebody else, because that might just be their breakthrough. Too many times in society, we play as if we never went through situations, and we tend to chastise the individual who is going through the situation. But if we have more persons making our young people understand that, hey, life is not easy. Yes, I went through it. It is just a step in progress. Believe in yourself. Take time and study God's word and have that relationship. It is not a bed of roses, and you will get there. Okay. And Marcus Aurelius says, you have the power of your mind. The power you have of your mind is not in outside events. Whatever you want to accomplish, it's a personal transformation within. It is a personal transformation with your mindset. And this is it is a difficult task, because again, we are conditioned, and the society that we live in makes it very difficult for us to push past. However, struggles and trials come to teach us lessons. It is basically there to teach us lessons. And the power, whatever we say, can have tremendous effect on an individual, especially like Mr. Senkwa said, there is a lot of power in the tongue. Many times parents tend to tell a child, oh, you are stupid, you are ridiculous. And this child looks up to that parent as my nurturer, the person who's supposed to hold me close, the person who's supposed to be responsible for me, give me all that love and attention. And this person is saying to me that I am stupid, I am ugly. So therefore, that child will believe what is being said. So we now as parents, and I'm putting myself in that, I know it is a frustrating process, especially for young parents. There are times when sometimes I question and I say, oh my goodness, when am I going to get my son or my daughter to understand this process? But with trial, and children will do things that's wrong. And I always say to parents that good or bad, your child is still yours. Don't give up and don't lose the faith in them, because if you lose the faith, this is where they're going to become the next statistic. They're going to become the next homicide, etc. So we really need to take time and understand that we are unique, and that our attitudes determine what the outcome will be. And if we practice all those things, we will definitely have a peaceful St. Lucia. Thank you.
All right, let's give it up for Yannicka Jabbar. She first off started off by identifying the state of our society, and not just giving us the problem, but highlighting several solutions. What is the pathway forward? Why is it important to establish our purpose and stand strong in it? The value of blossoming through crisis, because the obstacle is many times the way through. Believe in yourself, and a personal transformation within is what is required to rise above where we may have come from. So we're drawing close to the end of today's session. We have our final speaker. So help me welcome Mr. Lenius Hippolyte, who is a youth minister at the Greater Works International Ministries. And he has functioned in ministry for over 13 years as an evangelist and is a youth motivational speaker. He participates in praise and worship, deliverance and counseling, and he has a passion for young people, and he mentors them to succeed in life. Welcome, Mr. Hippolyte.
You're mute.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to say thank you for Mr. Topier, who, because of you, I'm actually speaking on this platform today and any of the other facilitators as well. Um, so far, a lot of the speakers have really, or the panelists have really delved into some very, interesting areas to talking about peace. I would like to come from almost like a culmination of what everybody has said, but also with a twist on it as well. Speaking as somebody who is operating in the religious sector, it has been it's a very interesting place to operate from. And my perspective on peace is going to be something I think that's going to interest you. I was very interested in the etymology of the word peace, and as I begin to delve or dive into that, I begin to realize that when you look at it, it's very synonymous with the words harmony and tranquility and, without the absence of hostility. And it made me realize that peace has a lot to do with environment. Peace has to be facilitated, which means that we have to develop a culture of peace. And so, a culture of peace, why is that important? Because the absence of peace is chaos. The absence of peace is war. The absence of peace will cause so many different issues to begin to arise. And if we have not been intentional and deliberate about uh, facilitating peace and creating a culture of peace, then it would be difficult for us to experience it. It is easy for us to say that we want peace, but what are we willing to do to ensure that we cultivate peace? Because it can be cultivated. It is not something that is going to be that's going to arrive just like that. And so it brings me to a very interesting scripture that I really want to read out to you. It's in Romans chapter 12 and verse 18. I'm reading from the King James Version. And it says, if possible, as much as lieth in you, live peaceably with all men. Okay, and so it's not saying that strife and different things may not arise, but it's saying, if possible, live peaceably with all men. Interestingly enough, I want to take us back into time a little bit, and I really want us to look at something um, in relations to Saint Lucia, our country. According to our history, St. Lucia was fought over by the British and French numerous times. In fact, history records that the French were the first Europeans to settle on the island, and they signed a treaty with the native Caribs in 1660. England took control of the island in 1663. In ensuing years, England and French fought 14 times, 14 times for control of the island, and the rules of the island changed frequently. Eventually, the British took full control in 1814 because the island switched so often between British and French control. St. Lucia was also known as the Helen of the West. Of course, that's synonymous with the mythological character Helen of Troy. However, representative government was introduced in 1924 with universal suffrage being established in 1951, and from 1958 to 1962, the island was a member of the West Indies Federation, and on the 22nd of February 1979, St. Lucia became an independent state. Why is that important for us to know? It means that in order, St. Lucia had a rough start when it came to peace. Okay? Imagine a country being fought over 14 times by two different uh, nations that wanted possession of St. Lucia. And so, if we expect to change what has gone on in our history does not necessarily define our future. However, it gives us an idea of what we have gone through, the mistakes that we have made in the past, and to improve on those things. Are we improving as a people? Are we going in the forward in the direction, sorry, of peace, or are we still uh on the past and we are still settled for the past mistakes that we have made? We as a people need to come together in order for us to be able to facilitate peace. How do we facilitate a culture of peace? It's right in the definition of the word peace. It's about coming together. Can two, a scripture verse in the Bible actually says, can two walk together unless they agree? And we have to come to a place of agreement despite our differences, despite our different backgrounds, despite uh our status in society, whether some people consider them other people to be poor, middle class, or wealthy, which is a reality. However, can we come together despite our differences and still foster a peaceful environment that would help bring up the country, bring up the people by extension? I believe that one of the most interesting things about peace is that it starts with first yourself, and then it spreads out like a fire, and it is infectious. Then it goes from just not you, but just not just staying at you, but it infects your family, your friends, and by extension a community. In St. Lucia currently, we have a lot of people from a religious perspective and from doing counseling and different things like that. You have a lot of people who are coming from broken homes. Broken homes often signify a deficit of peace. Persons always complain about things like arguments, separation, violence, abuse, trauma, and all of these things come out and spring out from the nucleus family. Now, granted, St. Lucia is heavily based on a nuclear family. However, St. Lucia also has a lot of demographic where you have a lot of single parent homes. In 20, between the year of 2022 and 2023. In fact, going all the way from 2016 to 2023, in my from this is not statistical information, but based on my interaction with those that I have spoken to, interacted with, spoken at different events, it is clear and has become apparent that single parenthood has increased significantly in St. Lucia. And this is not a good direction for a people who are trying to facilitate peace. Why? Because I believe that a lot of things really come from the family. Because whatever is birthed in the environment of the family, because the family is a womb, and the family gives birth to certain things. And so if the family has trauma in there, you're sending somebody with trauma, whoever, probably the person was physically abused, sexually abused. And so you're sending somebody like that into society. This person is, um, for, to be a bit more tactile, this person is going into the world not knowing what peace even looks like, not even comprehending what that looks like. When you are in an environment that was chaotic, oftentimes you will be a product of that. And we need to do better in working together. This is why I love something that the moderator said, that if you are not part of any organization or anything like that, it's your personal responsibility. So whatever you can do to help facilitate and foster, because fostering is basically just promoting. And so whatever we can do to promote peace, um, we should do that. For me, it's operating within the religious sector. Of course, more can still be done, and I'm looking forward to doing more collaborations and things like that. However, we cannot allow our history. This is my main point today, actually. We cannot allow our history to define our future, but today we can determine within ourselves that it is our personal responsibility to facilitate and to foster and to promote peace in our homes, in our families, in our communities, and by extension, it will begin to spread throughout the nation. If each one helps one, then we have a better chance at prospering in an area of peace. From a religious perspective, we have to also understand that the church can also play a very pivotal and important role when it comes to peace. I grew up going to a Catholic school in Grand Riviere, not Grand Riviere Dennery, but Grand Riviere Grocery. I grew up going to a Catholic school, or rather a school heavily based on Catholicism. So every morning we had like mass, we had like prayer, we had different things. There were things that worked before that I believe that we need to revisit. We need to revisit bringing back, like the previous speaker, Miss Yanika said, we need to bring back the some of the things that were working in times past. It is still relevant now. And last but not least, I believe in order for us to facilitate peace, we have to be adaptable. It's not about the message, somewhat has not changed, but the packaging of the message needs to change. If we expect to reach the generation that is now, we cannot do things like how our predecessors did them in times past. Of course not. They are not the same people. They are in a different time. They are in a different era, and the amount of things that's going on now, or rather, let me put it like this: some of the challenges that some of us faced when we were growing up, are 100 times amplified in this generation. So our approach cannot be the same. However, the principle remains the same. We still need guidance. We still need mentors. We still need surrogate mothers and fathers, persons who would be willing to take on the role to help mentor and bring up children and help guide them, because that's also missing. Prayer is still important. The previous speaker said the Bible says to train up a child in the way that he should go, that when he gets older, he would not depart from it. Okay? So we need some more discipleship. And it just means, to train. And so I hope that we come together and that we do what is necessary in order to facilitate an environment and a culture of peace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lenius. A very interesting perspective on how our nation's history has perhaps had a negative impact on the peace that exists within it overall. 7 times French, 7 times British. All right. Very important, the need for a change in our approach to addressing today's challenges, but understanding that the foundations of those solutions is the same, heavily based on guidance, mentorship, surrogate mothers and fathers, as he put it, and of course, ensuring that we have prayer right there in the middle. So on behalf of the Universal Peace Federation, ladies and gentlemen, our esteemed guests who have taken the time to be on this webinar, the panelists who have prepared and presented, we thank you for being part of today's session. Personally, as the curtains come down on this enlightening webinar themed Fostering a Nation of Peace that was organized by Mr. Remy Topier of the Universal Peace Federation, we heard from 6 dynamic young leaders. We can agree on that, right? And I am deeply moved by the collective spirit and commitment that we have witnessed here today. We would agree that our journey through these discussions and insights shared have reaffirmed the power of unity in promoting peace, guided by universal spiritual and moral values. These discussions have definitely shone light on many paths we must pursue, not optional at all right, towards building a nation of peace. By embracing our shared humanity, celebrating our differences, how that lays the foundation for a more harmonious future, how together we can continue to sow these seeds of peace, we can nurture understanding and build bridges that span the divides, making our shared dream of a peaceful world a lasting reality. All right, so as we leave this virtual gathering, let us carry forth that spirit that we had in today's discussions. All right, let our actions be guided by these principles. Let us remember that it is these principles that they bind us together. They transcend borders, faith, and cultures, and that as ambassadors of peace in our communities, because it goes from just beyond these presentations and our organizations, it goes to our communities, our workplace, our homes, that each and every one of us plays a vital role in the collective endeavor to create a world where peace prevails. All right, so this has been our presentation today. I thank you, and may peace continue to guide our steps forward as we build this nation of St. Lucia. Goodbye.
Thank you, everyone.